Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to NRW. I am your host today, Rob the Movie Guy, and I thank you very much for joining me here today because today I'm reviewing one of my all-time favorite shows in The Wayans Brothers, and this is the show that I have grown up with since I was a kid. Both my brother and I are big fans of the show. We had watched the show together when we were kids, and it was something that we look forward to on Wednesday nights because this show had first aired back in January of '95, and then it was canceled back in May of '99, if I'm not mistaken. Which is a shame because the show for me had a lot to offer and in my opinion is one of the greatest sitcoms of all time. I don't know if other people will feel that way about the show, but I truly think this is a underrated show and it's sitcom gold for me in my opinion. And I have been a fan of the Wayans Family since I was a kid as well because of the TV show In Living Color. And to me, In Living Color is one of the greatest sketch comedy shows of all time. That show had a huge impact in the industry when it had aired. And again, as I mentioned before, that's where I became aware of the Wayans Family with Kim, Keenan, Damon, Sean, and Marlon. From there, I became a fan of the family. And I had also been keeping up with the work in the film industry as well. I mean, they have been in some phenomenal movies, and some of them are my own personal favorites, with Damon having done two films that I adore with all my heart. One of which is the movie Blank Man, which in my opinion is a truly underrated film. And I don't know if people will agree with me when I say this, but I don't give a shit. I think Blank Man is one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. I really, really do love that film, and I plan on doing a review to express my love for this movie somewhere down the line. And he's also one of my favorite action movies of all time in the film The Last Boy Scout, which he stars alongside Bruce Willis. And when you come to find out that both Bruce and Damon hated each other on set, you can't tell when you watch the movie because their chemistry is so good on the screen, and they made in my opinion, an action masterpiece that I'm blown away to hear these stories about what had happened behind the scenes. And I also plan on doing a review for that film as well. But of course, he's also done other films along the way. Major Payne, which is a fantastic film, and Keenan Ivory Wayans has done very well with the film industry, having directed some of the greatest spoofs of all time in the movies like Scary Movie 1 and 2. Of course, he had directed White Chicks, which is one of the greatest comedies of all time, in my opinion, and that is my sister's favorite movie of all time. And of course, Little Man. And he also directed and wrote and starred in a movie that I think doesn't get enough love. And the last I had saw the Rotten Tomato scores of this movie, I think it was sitting at 0%, if I remember reading correctly, which is a shame because I thought this movie was fantastic. And this was the film A Low Down Dirty Shame. That movie was so good, in my opinion. But then again, I haven't seen it in quite some time, so I don't know if my opinions will change upon rewatching it whenever I get around to that. But I remember as a kid when I saw it, 3-4 times, I thought it was a fantastic movie, and that was the impression that I had last left with when I had last seen the film. But the Wayans family have made an impact in the Hollywood industry, and they really had, in some way or shape or form, kind of changed the game a bit when it comes to comedy, because at that point, once their success with the parodies have become, had been well received by a number of people in the industry as well as audiences around the world, everyone else started copying that, and then thankfully they started going into a different direction to doing their own thing, not in the parody genre. And we get movies like White Chicks, and of course some people may not like this movie, but I thought it was okay, and I did enjoy for the most part, was the film Little Man. So I can go on and on about the Wayans family because they really are an important set of figures in the industry, but not because they're funny, because they're actually really have changed the industry to some degree and changing the landscape of comedy, because their comedy is so impactful that you clearly can see the influence that they've had on a number of people since they've been around. And for me personally, they have been a staple in my childhood, and I still am a fan to this day of their work, and I will eventually do more reviews of the Wayans family down the line because I really am a fan of their work. I really don't remember what was the first episode that I had first come across when I saw this show, but I do remember that I saw Marlon on TV, and that was enough for me to stick around to watch the episode. And of course, from there, I became a fan of the show. But if someone were to ask me, what is it about the show that you love the most? Believe it or not, it's not the comedy, although that is one of the reasons why I do love the show. But it really has to do with the family aspect of it. And this may sound cliche and cheesy, but whatever. I love the family aspect that they offer in the show, where you can see that they are clearly looking out for one another, looking out for their best interests, looking out for their well-being. And although they have some rough patches along the way throughout the series, but they always learn to overcome that and then stick around and to help their loved ones and support them no matter what. And it seems like a very genuine aspect of the show, and it is clearly brought in from their real life to be brought into this show. Because if you watch interviews with both Sean and Marlon, you can clearly see that Marlon is the wild one. He's the guy that, hey, saying all this crazy stuff, and he's just talking and talking and talking. And then Sean is a little more collected, and when Marlon is kind of going off on a tangent, you can see Sean be like, Marlon, calm down, let her finish what she's trying to say. You can see that. And then that's obviously brought into the show because that happens quite a lot. Obviously it's a little more amplified, but it's a part of their real life aspect of the relationship that they bring into the show, and there's an authenticity that comes with that as well too. And when you have moments with Pops, who is played by the legendary John Witherspoon, even he has a lot of wild moments in the show, but he also has a lot of really good heartfelt moments. And I forget how good of an actor he really can be, because in this show you get to see a lot of those dramatic beats that he delivers when he is having these one-on-one moments with his sons, giving them some really sound advice. And for me, this is one of the reasons why I think I connected the most with the show, because I really truly appreciated that side of the show where they are bringing a lot of the heart that's required to help balance the comedy out, because there is plenty of comedy, there's no doubt about that, but the heartfelt moments are really prevalent in the show, and that's what I always take away with the most whenever I come across this show. And for anyone who's ever watched the show from start to finish, you'll notice all the major changes that were made throughout the series, where there are really no explanation as far as why those changes were made, and if there is, it's kind of touched upon very briefly, and then you just move on from there. One of those major changes for me was from season 1 going to season 2. That's the major one you've noticed, which is that in season 1, Sean has a girlfriend named Lisa, and she is a very prominent character in that first season. In fact, when the season ends, you get the impression they're going to be together forever, and you'll see her back in season 2. Well, prior to season 2, she breaks up with Sean. I forgot the reason behind the breakup off the top of my head, but they touch upon that very briefly in the first episode, and then from there, it's never mentioned again. And then in season 1, Sean works for a delivery company called APS, which is a clear ripoff of UPS. And then prior to the events of season 2, he gets fired, and then he ends up running his own newsstand in this fictional building called the Niedermeyer building, which is located out in Manhattan in the Rockefeller Center. And Pop's Diner in the first season was a standalone restaurant, and then gets moved into the Niedermeyer building where Sean is running his newsstand. And again, no explanation. And then the look of the show also had changed as well too. In the first season, it has this like yellow look to it that I can recall. And then in season 2 onward, it doesn't have that same color palette anymore. It has a much more cleaner look, if you will. And I'm not trying to sound disrespectful as I'm saying that, but you can clearly tell that the look of the show had changed a great deal from season 1 to season 2. And you could also see that there have also been some other characters that were featured in the first season and also in the second season that were seemingly very important characters and then were never to be seen again. And one of those characters for me was a personal favorite of mine. I believe was also a favorite with a lot of the audience members too. The character in White Mike. White Mike was basically a guy who was acting black around everyone else in the show. And then every once in a while, his whiteness would come out, and everyone would be a little surprised with that. And he'd be like, "Oh no, that's not what I meant to say." It. So he was a funny character, and he was one that I was happy to see whenever he would appear in the show. And then one day after in season 2, we just don't see him anymore, and there was a reason for that. And the reason is because the actor that played White Mike in the Wayans brothers had gotten his own TV show called Nick Freno, and that was a show that I also watched as well, that also aired on the WB network. And I remember liking the show a great deal. Now, granted, I haven't seen the show in quite some time, so I don't know how the show would actually hold up. But I do remember specifically being excited for that show because of that actor that played White Mike. And it got canceled after 2 seasons. I'm not sure if it had to do with ratings or whatnot, but even in the Wayans Brothers TV show, they don't make any sort of commentary about what had happened to White Mike. And I thought it would have been funny that they would have made some sort of inside joke that White Mike had left the city to go work as a school teacher or work as a substitute teacher rather. And then they would probably make a joke like, who would want to hire that fool to be a teacher around a bunch of kids? And I would have thought that would have been a nice little tip to the hat, because both shows were airing on the same network, but we never got that. And in season 2, we get introduced to a character by the name of Monique, played by the actress Paula Jai Parker. And she had actually appeared in season 1 as an entirely different character. In that one episode, she appears, and she was the love interest for Marlon. And it was a funny episode. It was cheesy, but I still enjoyed the episode. And then season 2, she comes in again as an entirely different character. And she's clearly a character who had a lot of money and was very snobbish. And then loses all her money and now has to work a regular 9-to-5 job where she's making nowhere near the amount as she was previously earning. And then she was also the potential love interest to Marlon. And I say that for a reason, because when you first get introduced to her, again, she's very snobbish at first, but then you start to learn more about her and start to see more of the character and you start to see that development for her. And I grew to like the character a lot. And once Marlon had gone through all the hurdles of trying to win her over and then finally making that happen, we don't see her again. And if I can remember correctly, there's no explanation about what had happened to her, if I recall correctly. And it's one of those things where she was there and then next thing you know, she's gone. Also in season 2, we get introduced to another character by the name of Lou, who's played by the actress Jill Tasker, who plays the security guard in the Niedermeyer building. And she's a native New Yorker, and she has a very tough personality like all New Yorkers do. And she was a lot of fun. I really did like her character a lot. And then one day we don't see her again. She's just gone. And we get introduced to the new security guard, Dee Baxter, played by the actress Anna Maria, whose last name I can't pronounce right now. I'll have it for you guys to see on the screen. And she comes in as a new security guard. And the only real explanation that we have as far as Lou's absence is that both Sean and Marlon commentate on that, and they said that, hey, this is the new security guard, Dee Baxter, who's filled in the position. And that's it. That's all we really know what had happened. There's no mention of whether or not if Lou quit, if she got fired, nothing. And then what was funny is that the following episode, Lou is now back, and it's almost as if though nothing had happened. And you can tell that this was recorded prior to Dee being introduced. And then after that episode, she's gone, and then Dee's back in the picture, and then every episode after that, she's pretty much a permanent cast member at that point, which she's a great addition, of course. But I just found it a little strange that Lou was no longer in the picture. I think she only appeared like in a total of 7 episodes, which is a shame because I liked her a lot. But once you get to know Dee, honestly, she was a better character. But on the flip side of all that, we also get introduced to a whole new set of characters that turn out to be fan favorites, personal favorites of mine, and are recurring characters throughout the remaining parts of the show. And 2 of those characters are TC, played by the actor Phil Lewis, and also Dupree, played by the actor Jermaine Hopkins. And Jermaine Hopkins was an actor that I was already familiar with because I had seen him in a movie called Lean On Me, which is a great movie. And I may do a review for that film one day down the line. And he has a wonderful performance in that film where he stars alongside Morgan Freeman. If you have not checked out that movie, I recommend you guys do check it out because it is a great film. But both Dupree and TC, in my opinion, have some of the best bits in the entire show. In fact, a lot of the episodes that they appear in turn out to be some of my more favorite episodes. In fact, with TC, when you first get introduced to him, he looks like a pimp, he dresses like a pimp, but he isn't a pimp. He's actually just a street hustler, and he talks in the street vernacular as well. But in one particular episode, you'll get to learn more about his background. In fact, there was a robbery that had occurred that someone had stolen Sean and Marlon's belongings from their apartment. And it just so happened that TC was in the area around the time that robbery had taken place. And given that they knew about his criminal background, where he had served time in prison for, I think, stealing something, they automatically assumed that TC would be the one that would take their things because they know that he is a hustler. He's going to take stuff that is very cheap and then overprice it to sell it and make more money. And they assumed that that was possibly the case here. So they accused him of robbing their home, and then the police had arrested TC. And then they come to find out that TC was not the man that had robbed them. It was somebody else entirely different. So now they have to go and confront TC and apologize to him. But he had felt betrayed by them because he had told them, hey, I would never do anything to jeopardize our friends. I would never do anything to hurt you guys or I just would never steal from you. You guys are my friends. I would never do that to you. But they didn't believe him, and they had him thrown in jail. So now, obviously, he comes out. He's very pissed off. But you get to learn more about the character. But at the same time, you get to see a different side of him as well, too. And I think this was a great opportunity where you get to see Phil Lewis show a dramatic side to the character, and it was a very fitting one. It didn't feel out of place. It was handled very well, in my opinion, and it was actually one of my favorite episodes. And you also get to learn what TC stands for, which stands for Thelonious Capricornio, I believe is how you pronounce it. So you can understand why he just shortened it to TC. But both TC and Dupree, in my opinion, were some of the best characters in this show. And I can understand that they were not going to be featured in every episode. They were in and out, but thankfully it wasn't a situation where they were in and then completely gone, and we never see them again. I was happy to see them every time they reappeared in the show. It was one of my, like I said before, some of the episodes they are in turned out to be one of my favorite episodes. And there's one other character that I believe was very important that I forgot to mention, and that's Sean and Marlon's grandmother and Grandma Ellington, played by the actress Janae Dubois. And she's actually known for playing the character of Willona Wood in the TV show Good Times. And she actually does make an appearance as that character in the Wayans Brothers in its dream sequence that Sean has, where all the cast members play the characters of the characters in Good Times. And of course, Janae Dubois plays Willona Wood. And it's actually a very good episode too. But she's also known for co-writing and singing one of the most iconic theme songs to a sitcom of all time, in the song Moving On Up, to the show The Jeffersons. And I love that show, The Jeffersons. But the reason I'm bringing her character up as well is because, as I mentioned before, she's a very important character. And I believe she gets introduced in season 3, and she makes quite a few appearances through a good part of the series. And then one day we don't see her again. Unfortunately, she's one of those characters that's brought in, is a very important character, and then she's gone. And I believe with this character, though, they do provide some explanation as far as what had happened to her, but I don't remember off the top of my head what that was. But I love that character because she has some of the funniest bits in the show as well. And she's also the mother-in-law to Pops. And I found that to be funny because years after the fact, I have come to find out that Janae Dubois in real life was actually 3 years younger than John Witherspoon. So I thought they did a pretty good job in making her look a lot older for the part of the grandmother. And she doesn't have a good relationship with Pops as well. They actually have some of the funniest bit when they're going back and forth at one another, throwing insults. And she also does provide a much more motherly figure that was, I wouldn't say it was missing, but it was a welcome element to the show. And like I said, she's in the show, and then once she's gone, that's it. And I was a little disappointed with that because I really did love that character. I want to talk about the comedy in this show because I mentioned before that to me, this show is one of the funniest shows I've ever seen in my life, and I don't think my opinion about that will ever change. But I will admit, though, that some of the comedy now doesn't necessarily hold up all that well, but I would say about 90% of it still does, at least for me personally. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when I was watching the show, it had dawned on me that a lot of the jokes that are told in this show could be deemed offensive by a lot of people. And I had also asked myself, would this show do well today in this PC and cancel culture that we live in right now? And if I'm being honest, no, I don't think it would. For anyone out there who is familiar with the Wayans family sense of humor, you'll know that when you watch their films, their TV shows, or their stand-up, that they don't hold back with their comedy. They practically have no filter when it comes to the jokes that they make on themselves and anyone else for that matter. And that's one of the reasons why I love their comedy, because they are not afraid to take risks. They push the envelope. They take chances. That's the kind of comedy that I gravitate to. I love comedy that just takes risk. And as I was watching the Wayans Brothers, I can't tell you how many times I thought to myself, that joke won't work, that joke won't work, and this will not fly today. And I also had realized too that this is a conversation that I would love to have with somebody about how the climate has changed and how films that came out, say, back in the 90s, like movies, say, for example, like Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood. And yes, I do know that title by memory. How that film would fare today. Would it work? I don't think it would, because of all the things that are presented in that movie. It just wouldn't fly today. A lot of people would find that stuff to be extremely offensive. And I would love to have a conversation that's going to be cool about it, that's going to be civil. I would not be interested in talking with somebody who's just going to be irate and just start berating me for the things that they may not agree with me on. And because I certainly wouldn't want to berate them either because I don't agree with them. I would like to take the chance to listen to them, because I think having an open line of communication and just learning to listen to each other is extremely important. But hopefully one day that will come to fruition, whether it be on here or some other platform. It's something that I would love to speak about with somebody, to share each other's thoughts, and hopefully we can walk away learning from each other and learning from the subject matter that we just talked about, because I think it's important to get into. And if you recall what I said earlier, that the show had aired back in January of 95, and it was canceled back in May of 99 due to low ratings. And it's a shame, because I felt like the show was getting better and better each and every season. And I can truthfully say that I think the weakest season of the show was actually season 1. And I don't think it was a terrible season, and I still found a lot of enjoyment from that season. But at least for me, you could tell they were still trying to figure things out and trying to get the rhythm. Because once season 2 starts, a lot had changed for that show. The look of the show, characters that were brought in were then no longer seen. So you can see they're trying to filter things out that was working for them and that wasn't working for them. And then in the second half of the season, all those changes that were made had actually improved the show a great deal. And then from that point on, it just kept getting better and better and better. And like I said before, because of low ratings, for whatever reason, people stopped watching the show. And I don't know why, because the show was awesome. And we never got a proper send-off for the characters, which is a shame, because they deserve it. Like any good show, they deserve a proper send-off. And I always wonder what the send-off would have been like for those characters. I'm pretty sure it would have been a very heartfelt last episode. No doubt it wouldn't have been a funny one, but I really think that Sean, Marlon, and all the other people involved with the show would have paid respects to the characters and also paid respect to the fan for sticking around for so long and saying goodbye to our favorite people in the world. But we never got that opportunity, and quite frankly, we never will. And it is something that, we have to accept, obviously, because we have no choice. But I will say that I think it's funny that they do comment on the cancellation of the show in the film Scary Movie.
You guys are psychos! You've seen one too many TV shows!
No! Watching television shows doesn't create psycho killers. Canceling TV shows does. The Wayans Brothers was a good show, man. It was a good-ass show, and we didn't even get a final episode. Diggity, I'm feeling woozy.
And there are a few things I want to get into real quickly before I close out this review. And the first of which is going to be the intro to the show, which in my opinion is one of the most iconic things about this show. Because in the first 2 seasons, you get that full opening where you have the satirical opening, and then you get that real opening where you have the 2 brothers helping out an old lady cross the road, and then she gets hit by a bus, lands on a park bench, and then miraculously survives the impact. And the song that's playing in the background is a song called Electric Relaxation by the hip-hop group A Tribe Called Quest, which is off their 3rd album, Midnight Marauders. And if you have not heard that song, I recommend you do check it out, because it is a very, very good song. But then in season 3, that intro is condensed a great deal, and all you get is that satirical opening, and then it goes straight into an image of the show's logo being wiggled around on the screen, and then you have a turntable just scratching, and that's pretty much the intro right there. So there really is no theme song that's used in season 3. But in seasons 4 and 5, both Sean and Marlon, alongside with their good friend and fellow actor Omar Epps, have produced an instrumental beat that was used as a theme for the show in seasons 4 and 5. And they also had shot some footage of the actors reacting to the camera and dancing along with the beat of the song for that intro in seasons 4 and 5. And that's one thing about the songs that I love that they used, with the exception of season 3, because there was no theme song. But in 1, 2, and in 4 and 5, the songs that they used I thought worked so well for the show, and I was relaxing to those beats, and it puts me in a pretty good mood as I'm getting ready to watch the show. So I don't know if anyone else felt that way, but I certainly did. And then one other thing I also want to point out too is I had forgotten the amount of guest stars that were featured in this show. I mean, there's quite a few actors and celebrities and musicians, athletes that were featured in the show. One of which is Missy Elliott, Busta Rhymes. Who else am I forgetting? Keith Sweat. When Keith Sweat was huge back in those days. And then you also have Paula Abdul, and Vogue was on there, and Sherry Headley from Coming to America 1 and 2, who played Akeem's love interest. She's in the show. She appeared like in 2 episodes, I believe. And then we also have, I'm forgetting somebody else too, which I'm gonna like go crazy once I remember after I finish this recording. But I remember that the last guest star they had on the show was Roy Jones Jr., who appeared in the very last episode of the show. So, and again, there's quite a few other people I may be forgetting too. Oh, Bernie Mac. That's what I wanted to say. Bernie Mac was in one of my favorite episodes in this show, and he was fucking hilarious in that show. I loved him in that episode. And he was, I mean, I miss Bernie Mac. Bernie Mac was one of the funniest people in the world, and for him to have a guest spot on the show was fantastic, because he really made that episode fantastic in my opinion. But yeah, that's pretty much it. There's a lot more that I didn't get into with this show because there's just so much to cover, and maybe one day I'll be able to revisit this down the line and have a much longer conversation, hopefully with somebody else that also loved the show as much as I do, because there is so much to get into with this show. And so now this will be a good time for me to get into my rating. And there should be no doubt for what my rating is going to be for this show, because I've already expressed my love for the show from the very beginning. So without further ado, I give this show a solid cheers. As I've already said before, I love this show, so I hope you guys go out of your way to check this show out. It is available on HBO Max, and once you see it, please let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to our channel and also share and like our videos, and also hit that notification bell down there. And also follow on our social media accounts. We have a Facebook and Instagram page at New Release Wednesdays, and on Twitter at TheNRW. And you can follow me on my social media accounts on Instagram, Rob_Medina0585, on Twitter, RobMedina0585, and on Facebook, simply just Rob the Movie Guy. And thank you very much for joining me here today. I hope you guys had a great time with this review, and until next time, everybody, you stay safe out there, and cheers.